Is Keir Starmer so worried that he might be toppled from the Labour leadership and UK Premiership that he has faked a challenge against him? The BBC is reporting that allies of Starmer have been accusing Health Secretary Wes Streeting of seeking support for a leadership challenge, but that he is denying it. It says, on Tuesday evening, friends of Sir Keir had told several news outlets his job might be under immediate threat and that they were particularly suspicious of Streeting's leadership ambitions. Speaking to the BBC on Wednesday, the Health Secretary said he could not see any circumstances under which I would do that to our Prime Minister. Someone has definitely been watching too much Celebrity Traitors. They should swap to Countryfile, he said. The BBC's chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman, reckons this volley of briefing about a leadership challenge is an attempt to shore up Starmer's leadership, but one that may have backfired. Here's what seems to be going on. Keir Starmer is in serious trouble, at least politically, even if not immediately under formal threat. Labour's polling at 19% is catastrophic. It implies a collapse of the governing party's credibility. MPs and activists, staring at disastrous local projections, are beginning to fear for their own survival. Once that fear sets in, discipline goes. We need to bear in mind that no matter what the mainstream media says, Starmer's so-called landslide in 2024 was never a genuine endorsement. It was a collapse in opposition turnout, not a surge in Labour enthusiasm. The Conservatives imploded, Reform UK split the vote, and millions of habitual voters simply stayed home in disgust. When you strip away the distortion of first past the post, Labour's 2024 result was historically anemic. The lowest share of the electorate ever to produce a parliamentary majority. Fewer actual votes than Labour won under Jeremy Corbyn in both 2017 and 2019, and a national turnout that indicated deep public disengagement rather than renewed faith in the system. Starmer's majority sits on political sand. It is a majority of seats built on a minority of belief. That means the current crisis is not just a Westminster psychodrama. It exposes the hollowness of Labour's electoral foundation. The idea that Starmer was some great vote winner has always been a myth created by arithmetic, not affection. He won't be able to replay that trick in 2029, when he has been in government for 5 years and has delivered austerity 2.0, suppressed unions, privatised bits of the NHS under reform rhetoric, and governed with the same authoritarian instincts as his predecessors. Abstention will no longer work in his favour. People won't stay home to help him when they feel betrayed by him. They will either vote against him or, as happened to the Tories last year, they won't vote at all. And both outcomes will be catastrophic for a government whose mandate was already paper thin. In that light, the current turmoil isn't a surprise. Labour MPs are suddenly realising that Starmer's safe pair of hands narrative only worked while he was an alternative to Tory chaos. Now he is the chaos, dull, joyless, and worse, visibly losing control of his own team. So when pundits describe a leadership challenge as madness after 17 months, they're missing the point. From a backbencher's perspective, sticking with the Prime Minister who never really won the country over and who is now hemorrhaging goodwill before midterm looks like the real madness. Added to this is Labour's current identity crisis. On the BBC's Politics Live on November 12th, columnist George Monbiot commented that Labour looks more Tory than the Tories. This strikes at the heart of the problem. Starmer promised competence and moderation after the chaos of Conservative rule, but now that he is the establishment, that contrast is gone. His technocratic authoritarian instincts Managerial, risk-averse, unwilling to inspire, have left him exposed. He looks robotic because he's governing by triangulation rather than conviction. That means there's no ideological ballast to keep the party together when times get rough. The right think he's too cautious, the left think he's betrayed every principle, and the centre sees a poll loser. Starmer is now facing the same perception that killed Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak's political careers: weak, isolated, out of touch. The landslide that once gave him authority now amplifies his failure because expectations were enormous. Voters thought they'd get strong leadership, but the economy is still flat, living costs are still high, and Labour looks indistinguishable from its predecessors. Even the international stability argument, the line about not upsetting markets or Trump, sounds desperate. It's exactly what Tory ministers said before they fell. Starmer doesn't command affection or fear. His MPs see him as a manager, not a movement figure. He has no grassroots base, no faction he can truly rely on, and even his cabinet is a collection of personal fiefdoms. Reeves, Mahmood, Miliband and Streeting all have separate followings. So, when turbulence hits, nobody rushes to defend him. They calculate. And they're calculating now. Zefman's line is telling. It's now typical in Westminster conversations for Labour MPs to wonder aloud whether changing leader might help. That alone shows Starmer's authority has cracked. The briefing operation from Number 10 seems to have been meant as a show of strength, warning MPs that Starmer would fight any challenge. But it has completely backfired. Instead of shutting down speculation, it validated it and named names. To publicly suggest Wes Streeting might be plotting was a catastrophic misstep. It painted Starmer as paranoid and defensive, while giving Streeting the perfect chance to pose as loyal and aggrieved. Even Labour MPs who don't like Streeting will now see the leadership's operation as toxic, in his own words. When insiders start describing Number 10 as the bunker, you know morale is gone. Streeting is an opportunist, not a natural leader. His own marginal seat and thin record make him an unlikely saviour. But, as often happens, he may become the lightning rod for wider discontent. Even if he never runs, the fact that loyalists are briefing against his name shows Starmer's inner circle has lost strategic discipline. Other names, Mahmood, Miliband, Powell, suggest MPs are actively gaming out alternatives, not just gossiping. Once that starts, momentum can build very quickly. The two immediate flashpoints mentioned by the BBC are the budget, 2 weeks away. Reeves's decisions could be politically explosive if they involve new spending cuts or tax rises breaking manifesto promises. And the devolved and local elections of spring 2026. These could be a bloodbath if polling stays this bad. Either could be the moment when talk turns to action. MPs are already floating the idea of a post-budget move. Starmer isn't about to be ousted tomorrow. There's no organised challenger yet, and MPs will hesitate before detonating their own government. But the political reality is that his leadership has entered the danger zone. Once the governing party starts publicly discussing who comes next, the current leader's authority rarely recovers. Unless Starmer can reverse the polls and re-inspire his MPs by spring, the budget or the 2026 locals could easily mean the first Labour Prime Minister in 15 years, could also be one of the shortest lived.